I'm sitting here now, staring at the blank page, but my mind is somewhere else. I can't help it. It's always been like this when the past comes rushing back. There's something about it, the way it claws its way back to the surface, forcing me to relive moments I've buried so deep inside I thought I could have. I wanted to make my son's birthday special. Jace was turning 8 and he deserved something real. His joy, his innocence, deserved it. No distractions, no drama, just him, his happiness, and me, his mom, doing everything I could to make it perfect. It wasn't supposed to be hard. I had a small budget, but I could manage. We didn't need much, just some decorations, a few balloons, and a cake. There was a time when I thought I could do anything. I could fix things. I could make everything right. I thought I could protect my son from the world, even if the world seemed to be tearing us apart. It was a small party. The kind you throw when you're doing your best with what you've got. I booked the community center's little back room, the one no one really cares about. It wasn't glamorous, but it was enough. We didn't need grandiosity, just some good old-fashioned fun. If you're a parent who's ever felt like the world was working against you, or if you've faced moments where you had to stand up for what's right, whether it's for your kids, your loved ones, or yourself, let us know how you overcame those challenges. Share your story with us and join a community of parents working together to create a better world for our children. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on inspiring stories and valuable insights. I spent hours baking it. I didn't have much experience with fondant or fancy decorating techniques, but I knew enough to make it something Jace would love. Minecraft, that was his world. The green squares, the little pixelated creatures, the blocks that make up everything. I shaped the cake into a creeper, painstakingly covering it with green fondant and tiny sugar blocks, each one painstakingly cut and placed by hand. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the moment I'll give him, the one thing that will make him smile all day long. A perfect birthday. But I didn't know that this cake would be the beginning of something far darker than anything I could have imagined. The day of the party, everything seemed to fall into place. Jace's eyes were wide with excitement. It was all for him. For a brief moment, the noise in my head quieted. This was going to be good, until they showed up. My sister, Rachel, always had a way of overshadowing me. It wasn't intentional, or at least, I didn't think it was. But Rachel was always the center of attention, the one who could make any situation about her. She walked in late, of course. She always did, with her oversized sunglasses and that ridiculous designer bag she liked to swing around. The one she always flaunted like it was her ticket to validation. I should have known then. I should have known that this wasn't going to be a good day. Rachel had brought her own cake, something better than mine. She laid it down on the table next to my Minecraft masterpiece, and of course, she didn't say anything nice about my effort. I brought a real cake, she said, her tone dripping with condescension as she looked at mine. Didn't want Jace to have to eat that thing you made. Her friends, her smug little entourage, laughed along with her. My parents, they joined in too. My mother, always so eager to reinforce Rachel's superiority, took a long sip of her wine and offered her usual remark. "Rachel is just so creative, honey," she said, her eyes flicking over to me with a look I couldn't quite place. "Yours looks homemade, bless your heart." I should have stopped it, right then. I should have told them to get out. To leave me and Jace to our small, imperfect world where no one judged, where no one had to pretend. But Jace, my son, he didn't know. He thought his aunt was being kind, that she was just sharing something special. He didn't understand. His little hands reached for that fake, plastic monstrosity Rachel had brought. I could see it in his eyes, the way he looked at the cake, the way he took a piece and brought it to his mouth. And then there was a moment. A small, fleeting moment where I felt the air change. A smell, thick and pungent, rose in the air. Dog food. It wasn't subtle. The moment I saw his face change, I knew something was wrong. That's when I smelled it. That's when I realized what they had done. What Rachel had done. The cake wasn't a cake at all. It was a cruel joke. A layer of dog food hidden beneath layers of frosting and chocolate sponge. And Jace, my sweet, innocent boy, he took a bite, and he froze. The room went quiet for a second before the laughter erupted, laughter that wasn't warm, wasn't kind. No. It was laughter that came from my parents, from Rachel's friends, from everyone who had gathered there to witness my son's humiliation. The people I thought were family. The people I thought loved him. I don't know how I didn't explode in that moment. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But my son, Jace, he didn't understand. He didn't get it. His eyes welled with tears and his tiny face contorted in confusion. Why? Why had this happened to him? Why had they done this to him? I reached for him, my heart breaking. "It's okay, Jace," I whispered. But it wasn't okay. It was far from okay. Rachel waved it off, laughing. "It's just a joke. God, he's so sensitive." My parents, they didn't stand up for him. They didn't tell Rachel to stop. Instead, they laughed too. They laughed at my son, at his pain, at his confusion. "Kids need to toughen up," my father added, as if it were all part of growing up. "You always baby him." I couldn't stay. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed Jace, pulling him away from the scene, and I carried him outside, his little body shaking with sobs, his shirt stained with frosting and shame. And no one followed us. No one cared. Not a single person came out to check on us. They stayed inside, eating Rachel's cake, enjoying the spectacle of it all. And that's when I knew I had to protect him. No one else would. It's been a week since the birthday party. A week filled with a silence that seems heavier with each passing day. It's not just the silence of not speaking to anyone. It's the kind of silence that settles deep in your bones, the kind that feels suffocating. I've spent every day since that moment replaying it in my mind like a broken record that never stops. The laughter, Jace's confusion, the way my own parents stood by, doing nothing. And Rachel, God, Rachel. She doesn't get it, does she? She never has. No one in this family ever has. I should have known, really. I should have known that day wouldn't be the end of it. That would have been too easy. It wasn't just the cake, it wasn't just some cruel prank. No, it was something more. It was a declaration, an invisible line drawn in the sand, one that said I am not good enough. Not good enough for them. Not good enough for my own family. It's funny how it takes something so simple, so small to break you. It wasn't the cake. It wasn't the laughter. It was the silence that followed. The moment Jace and I left, no one followed. No one checked on us. No one asked if we were okay. The room didn't empty, didn't pause for even a second to acknowledge that a child had just been humiliated, that a mother was holding her son in her arms, trying to make it stop. No. They stayed, happily munching on Rachel's cake like it was just another day, just another celebration. That's when it hit me. This family, this place, it wasn't a home. It was a show, a performance, a spectacle. And the ones that never got the applause, the ones like me, were just forgotten. Ignored, not important enough to matter. I don't know how I didn't leave right then, run far away from all of them. But I didn't. I went home. I locked the door behind me and sat with Jace on the couch, trying to comfort him. But how do you comfort someone who's lost trust? How do you hold a child who now believes that his family might not actually care for him? It's not the same. It's never the same, not after something like that. Days turned into nights and still nothing. Not a phone call, not a text. My mom, who always called, had nothing to say. Rachel, she didn't bother. I was left with this space that used to be filled with noise, with chatter and warmth. Now it was just cold, empty. But then something changed. It wasn't a moment of anger, not at first. It was something quieter, something more insidious. It was the realization that no one would ever take responsibility for what they'd done. No one was going to make it right. I was on my own, and I could feel it, the weight of it, the responsibility for Jace, the responsibility for myself. I spent the next few days alone in my head, processing everything. The layers of hurt, the years of being treated like I was invisible. The way my mother would always speak for me, the way Rachel's need to shine always seemed to outdo anything I did. It was exhausting, always being the one who gave, always being the one who understood, but never being the one who was seen. The anger, at first, felt out of reach. It felt distant, as if it belonged to someone else, someone who was stronger. But then I thought about Jace. I thought about that moment when I had to pull him away from all of them. The tears in his eyes, the confusion, the helplessness, and I felt something inside me harden. That's when it clicked. I wasn't just protecting my son, I was protecting myself too, and I couldn't keep running from it anymore. I had to make them see. I had to make them feel what I felt. The way they had treated me, treated us, it wasn't just a momentary thing. It wasn't some joke or accident, it was deliberate. A pattern, and they had all done it. I didn't need to shout, I didn't need to scream. No, what I needed was something quieter, something more permanent. I sat down one night, the weight of it all pressing on my chest. Rachel had always been the golden child, always had everything handed to her. My mother had always believed she could do no wrong. And my father? Well, he never cared. Never really did. He was always more focused on making everyone else happy than protecting his own family. But this time I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I couldn't, not after everything Jace had gone through. I wasn't going to let them just move on, not after they'd torn him apart. That's when I found the folder. It wasn't even something I was looking for. It was just sitting there, wedged between the seats in my car. Rachel had left it there a couple of weeks ago when I gave her a ride to that stupid spa she liked to visit. It wasn't much, just a manila folder, nothing fancy. But it felt like a weight when I pulled it out. And inside, a contract, a business loan for $50,000, but it wasn't in Rachel's name, it was in mine. My blood ran cold as I looked at the forged signature. My name, stolen, a fake LLC with my information, a loan I never signed, never agreed to. I was livid. But more than that, I felt betrayed. I felt like a fool. She had done this, Rachel, and she thought I wouldn't find out. She thought I would just let it slide, that I was too small, too weak to do anything about it. But I wasn't weak. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The truth was right there. She had thought she could use me, use my name, steal from me, and that was when I made a choice. I don't know why it took me this long to finally act. Maybe it was the shock of it all, the way it all unfolded, how easily they just brushed me aside. Or maybe it was the exhaustion, the constant need to be strong for Jace, always holding it together when inside I was crumbling. Whatever the reason, I spent too long letting them take advantage of me. But that was over now. I wasn't going to play the victim anymore. I wasn't going to sit back and let Rachel or anyone else in this family walk all over me. I'd been quiet for far too long, letting them assume I was weak. But weakness isn't silence. Weakness isn't the ability to hold it together for your child, to protect them from the storm that your family creates. That's strength. And now it was time to show them that. The loan contract Rachel had left behind, her stupid, careless mistake, was the key. It was the start of everything. Once I had that in my hands, I knew I had to make it right. I couldn't just let it go. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about the fraud. It was about the betrayal. The audacity. Rachel had used my name. She had taken what wasn't hers, and she thought she could get away with it. She thought she could do whatever she wanted, and I'd just let it slide. She thought I was too busy being the struggling single mom to fight back. But she was wrong. I wasn't going to make it obvious. I wasn't going to react the way they expected me to. I wasn't going to shout or scream or lash out. No, that's what they wanted. They wanted me to be the emotional one, the one who always cracked under pressure. They wanted me to be predictable, but I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Instead, I took a deep breath. And then I made my first move. I started by calling the bank. I didn't know what I was expecting, but the moment I spoke to the fraud department, it felt like a weight was being lifted off my shoulders. I had the loan documents, the forged signatures, the fake LLC. I had everything. I didn't even need to explain much. They were already opening an investigation, and I wasn't going to be held liable. But Rachel? She was going to be in for a big surprise. As I spoke to the bank, I could almost feel the coldness inside me spreading. I wasn't angry, not in the way I used to be. No, this was something different. This was calm. controlled. This was the moment when everything changed. I could see it now. Rachel's face, the shock when she realized the walls were closing in on her. She'd always been the one who prided herself on getting away with things. She had always been able to manipulate the situation, twist the truth until it was barely recognizable. But this time, I wasn't going to let her. But this wasn't enough. Not for me, not for Jace. This wasn't just about a loan or about some small victory. No, it was about making them feel it, making them understand the weight of what they had done to my son, to me. The next step was more personal. I wasn't going to stop with the bank. I reached out to people Rachel had wronged in the past, people she'd manipulated and used, people she'd thrown aside when they no longer served her purpose, people who knew who she really was behind the designer clothes and the carefully curated image. I started with her old roommate, the one she had burned over a petty argument. Then I moved on to the bakery owner, the one Rachel had viciously gone after online when she didn't get her way. And then there was Liam, her ex, the one she'd convinced everyone was abusive, when in reality, she had drained his savings and left him while he was going through chemotherapy. I made quiet calls, asking for details, asking for information that would expose Rachel for what she truly was. These weren't just random people. These were the people who knew her. They knew how she operated, how she destroyed everything she touched. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to build something bigger. I knew the perfect opportunity would come. It always did. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to take control of your life, even when everyone around you thought you could? Share your story below. I'd love to hear how you fought back and reclaimed your power. I didn't have to wait long. Rachel's fiancé, Eric, was planning an extravagant brunch for his family, the kind of event where appearances mattered more than anything. His family was old money, the kind of people who wore cufflinks that probably cost more than I made in a month, and who thought the world revolved around their name. Rachel had been working on her persona for months, perfecting it, honing it. She had convinced Eric's family that she was the ideal match. A poised, successful woman who ran a thriving business, who had everything in order. But I knew the truth. And this time, the truth was going to get out. I sent Rachel an anonymous gift. It was simple, really just a framed photo. A screen capture from Jace's birthday party, his little face crumpled with tears, frosting smeared all over him, and Rachel mid-laugh with a forkful of dog food cake. No note, just the photo. She panicked, of course. I knew she would. She called me 4 times in the span of 1 hour, but I didn't pick up. I didn't need to. The seed was already planted. I wasn't done, though. No, this was just the beginning. I remembered the auction I had gone to the week before, the one where I met Eric's parents, the ones who thought they were better than everyone else. I introduced myself as Rachel's sister, casually mentioned that I couldn't wait for them to be part of the family. And then I did something simple. I handed them a flyer. It looked like a menu, but it was. It was a list of every business Rachel had scammed, each one documented with proof. A Better Business Bureau complaint, a photo of the fake loan documents. And just to add a little extra flavor, I slipped in a screen capture from that birthday party, the moment when Jace was crying and Rachel was laughing. The next day, I got a call from Eric. He was livid. The brunch, it was canceled. Rachel had no idea why, but I knew. She would soon find out that her perfect little world was starting to crack. And just like that, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet sense of victory. I wasn't angry anymore, not like before. This was different. This was calculated. Rachel didn't know it yet, but she was already losing, and I was just getting started. I should have felt relief when the plan started to unfold. After all, everything was going according to what I had imagined. I was unraveling Rachel's perfect little world, piece by piece. I was playing my part, quiet and deliberate, leaving nothing to chance. But somewhere in the midst of all this, something began to shift inside me. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. It was subtle, like a small voice in the back of my mind that I couldn't quite silence. It was the kind of feeling that kept me up at night, gnawing at my insides. And it was starting to grow louder. The calls to Rachel's old acquaintances, the carefully constructed messages, the quiet whispers in the shadows, it was working. But at what cost? I had made a decision to protect Jace, to protect myself, but now I was wondering if I was losing a part of myself in the process. The line between what was right and what I was doing was blurring, and I wasn't sure where I stood anymore. Every day, I kept telling myself that I was doing this for Jace. That's what I held onto. I told myself that this was for him, that I had to do this to make sure he never had to face what he did that day again. He couldn't trust anyone in this family, not anymore. I was going to show them what it meant to hurt my child, what it meant to think they could walk all over me without consequence. But even as I pushed forward, the nagging feeling wouldn't leave. What was I becoming? When I was dealing with the bank, when I was making the calls to Rachel's old friends, I felt this strange sense of control. It was almost I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing something, that this path I had chosen was changing me. The more I uncovered, the more I exposed, the more I felt like I was slipping away from who I once was. I'd always been the person who believed in forgiveness, in second chances. I had always hoped that somewhere deep down, my family could change, that they could see the hurt they had caused and fix it. But now, it felt like I was digging a hole so deep that I wasn't sure I could climb out of it. I'd spent my entire life being the one who held everything together, being the one who forgave when it seemed impossible. But was I really doing this for Jace? Or was this revenge for me? For all the years I had spent feeling like I wasn't enough. For all the times I had quietly accepted the role of the invisible one in the family, the one who didn't matter, the one who was always left out. Was this about protecting my son, or was it about finally making them feel what I had felt all these years? I kept asking myself that question over and over, but there was no answer. There was no easy way to say it. The truth was, I didn't know anymore. That evening, I received a message from Eric. It wasn't a phone call like I had expected. No, this was different. It was a simple text, but it made my heart stop. "We need to talk." The message was brief, but the implications of it hit me like a ton of bricks. I hadn't heard from Eric in days, not since the brunch had been canceled. I assumed everything was moving according to plan, that Rachel was too busy trying to save face to notice what I had done. But now I was starting to feel the weight of it all. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. My hands shook as I stared at the screen, the words sinking in. What if I had pushed too far? What if Eric knew what I had done? What if Rachel had found out about the flyer? What if this whole thing had backfired? I told myself I wasn't afraid. I told myself I had to keep going, that I couldn't back down now. But the truth was, I was terrified. Terrified of losing everything. Terrified of the consequences. Terrified of the person I had become. And yet, despite the fear, I felt this strange pull inside me. The pull to keep going, to see it through, to watch Rachel's perfect little world come crashing down. I didn't know if it was justice, or if it was just the desperation of someone who had been pushed too far, too many times. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't go back. The clock was ticking. I knew Eric would want to meet soon, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment everything was going to unravel. I couldn't escape it. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the clock. The seconds seemed to drag on. What if I was wrong? What if this was all a mistake? What if this wasn't just about Jace? What if I was becoming someone I didn't even recognize? The guilt and doubt gnawed at me, but there was still that voice telling me to keep going. To finish what I had started. I felt sick, nauseous. My stomach twisted into knots as I glanced down at my phone. I could feel the walls closing in. The weight of everything I had done, everything I was about to do. Was I really ready for this? I didn't have much time to think. The decision had been made. I was going to meet Eric. I had to. But deep down, I knew that once I crossed that line, there would be no turning back. I was already too far gone. And I wasn't sure if that scared me, or if I was finally starting to accept it. I sit in the car, the engine running, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight that my knuckles are white. It feels like the world is on pause, like everything is holding its breath, waiting for me to make a move. Eric's text is still fresh in my mind, that simple, devastating message, "We need to talk." I don't know what to expect. But deep down, I'm afraid. Afraid that this meeting will be the beginning of something I can't control, something I won't be able to undo. I've already crossed so many lines. I've already taken so many steps down this dark, twisted path, and now I'm standing at the edge of the cliff, looking down into the unknown. I can't go back. I take a deep breath, trying to calm the storm that's raging inside me. There's a part of me that wonders if I'm too far gone. If the woman I've become, the one who's planning to tear apart her sister's life, the one who's willing to do whatever it takes to make them feel the pain they've caused, if this is the person I truly am now. The guilt hits me in waves, crashing against the shore of my mind, and yet, I don't know if I care anymore. It's strange, isn't it? How the line between right and wrong can become so blurred when you're desperate. When you've been pushed to the edge so many times that you can barely recognize who you were before. I thought I was doing this for Jace. I told myself I was protecting him, that I was making sure no one ever hurt him like that again. But somewhere along the way, I started to wonder if this was for me. If this was my way of finally reclaiming something I'd lost, my dignity, my sense of self-worth, the control I'd always given up without question. The more I think about it, the more I realize that this has nothing to do with Jace anymore. Not entirely. This is my battle. This is my fight for me. I arrive at the coffee shop, the place where Eric said he wanted to meet. It's a small, quiet place, the kind of place that feels almost too comfortable. It's the kind of place you go to hide, to get lost in the crowd, to forget for a while. But I know there's no forgetting here. Not tonight. I walk inside, and there he is, sitting in the corner, a black coffee in front of him. He's dressed in his usual suit, but he looks different today. His posture is stiff, his eyes cautious. He knows something is coming, and I can see it in his face. He's waiting for me to make the first move. I sit down across from him, the space between us feeling like an ocean. I can feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy. There's so much unsaid between us, so much history, so much that's been left unspoken. "Rachel told me what happened," he says quietly, his voice calm, but there's an edge to it. I don't know if I should be angry or if I should just try to understand. I stare at him for a long moment, wondering what he really means. Try to understand? What is there to understand? What is there to forgive? I want to tell him everything, to throw it all out on the table, to make him understand what I've been through, what they've done to me. But I know I can't. Not here, not like this. I'm not asking you to forgive her, I say, my voice low. I just want you to understand. I want you to see her for who she really is. I don't know why I say it. Maybe it's because I need him to understand. Or maybe, just maybe, I need someone else to see it too. To see how twisted this whole thing is. To see how it's been eating me alive, piece by piece. Eric leans back, studying me, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I get it," he says slowly. "I do, but I don't think revenge is the answer. It's just going to make things worse." I can feel a knot form in my stomach. His words hit me harder than I expect. Revenge, that's what he thinks this is about. But it's not. It's not about revenge, it's about justice. It's about making them feel the weight of what they've done. Justice? Eric's voice is soft now, almost like he's trying to reach me. What good is it going to do, really? Will it fix anything? Will it fix Jace? His words cut through me, deep and sharp, like a knife twisting in my gut. I want to scream at him, to tell him he doesn't understand. But instead, I stay quiet. I just sit there looking at him, feeling that knot in my chest tighten even more. He's right. He's right, and I hate it. I want this to be over. I want the pain to stop, but I don't know how to make it stop. I don't know how to undo everything I've done, how to take back all the things I've said, all the moves I've made. How do you go back after you've crossed that line? How do you come back from this? I look at Eric, and I see the man I once thought I could trust. But now I see someone who doesn't get it. Someone who still believes in the possibility of forgiveness, the possibility of things getting better. But I don't. Not anymore. I'm done forgiving. I'm done letting people walk all over me. And as I sit here, staring at him, I realize that the person who is most broken is Rachel, or my parents, or anyone else. It's me. I'm the one who's lost. I'm the one who's been shattered into pieces. But I can't stop now. I can't go back. I just nod, finally breaking the silence. I'm sorry, Eric, but I have to do this. As I leave the coffee shop, I can feel the weight of my decision. I thought I had it all figured out. I thought I knew what I was doing, that I was in control. But now, it feels like everything is slipping through my fingers. The closer I get to the truth, the more I realize that maybe I don't know anything anymore. All I know is that I can't stop. And that terrifies me more than anything else. I stand at the edge of the door, my hand on the handle, but I don't open it right away. The cold air outside seems to be waiting for me, as if it knows that the moment I step through it, everything will change. The weight of the last few weeks presses down on me, the lies, the decisions, the parts of myself I've chipped away just to keep going. And for what? To prove a point. To make them feel something, to make them understand. Or to silence the parts of me that have been screaming for so long, I don't know anymore. I left the coffee shop with Eric's words hanging in the air like smoke. I don't think revenge is the answer. But the truth is, I've spent so much time telling myself I wasn't seeking revenge that I can't even remember when the line between justice and vengeance became so blurry. What did I want out of all this? What was the goal? I look at my phone again, the screen still flashing with unanswered messages. Rachel hasn't called, neither has my mother. The silence is deafening, and somehow it feels even worse than their voices, their judgment, their cruelty. It's funny, isn't it? How the people who are supposed to be the closest to you, the ones who should know you the best, can make you feel like you're nothing. And you let it happen. You let them tear you down. But when it's time to finally stand up, when you decide you're done, you can't help but wonder if you're making a mistake. If the price is too high. I get in my car and drive. It's a mindless kind of motion, just the hum of the engine, the occasional flick of my turn signal. I don't know where I'm going. I just need to go. To keep moving, to keep going until I can stop thinking about the mess I've made, the path I've chosen. I pull into the parking lot of the same community center where Jace's birthday party was held. The place that should have been a place of joy for him. A place that should have been filled with laughter and light. But now it feels like a ghost of what it was supposed to be. I sit there for a moment, the car idling, and I think about that day. I think about Jace's face, his tiny body trembling in my arms, his eyes wide with confusion, with hurt. Why? That's the question that's haunted me all this time. Why? The reason doesn't come in clear answers. It comes in bits and pieces. It comes in the way they looked at me, the way they laughed at him. The way Rachel smiled when she saw him cry. The way my parents did nothing. I close my eyes and think about Jace, his little hand gripping mine that day as we left. His quiet sobs as I held him close. I'm sorry, Jace. I'm so sorry you had to see that. I'm sorry I didn't stop it sooner. But I didn't stop it. I didn't stop any of it. I kept pretending that things would get better. I kept telling myself that one day my family would change, that one day they'd realize what they had done and make it right. But that's not how it works, is it? You can't wait for people to see you. You can't wait for them to change. You have to make them. And that's what I did. Or at least, that's what I thought I did. I look around the parking lot, seeing the world in shades of gray, in quiet moments of stillness. And in that stillness, I feel the weight of it all, the lies, the secrets, the hurt. I wonder if all of it was worth it. Was it worth tearing apart the only family I've ever had? Was it worth losing myself in the process? The truth hits me then, in a way I wasn't prepared for. The silence, the one I had wanted so desperately to end, was never going to be broken by me. Not by revenge, not by any action I could take. The silence wasn't theirs, it was mine. I thought I needed to make them feel something, to force them to acknowledge the pain they caused. But in the end, the only thing I was doing was keeping the silence alive. I had become part of the cycle. I had let their cruelty become my own, and in doing that, I had locked myself in a prison of my own making. I take a deep breath, the weight of it all settling in. I know what I have to do. I pull out my phone and call my mom. It's the first time I've called in weeks. Her voice comes through, tentative, unsure. Hello. Mom, I say, my voice quieter than I expected. We need to talk. There's a pause. Then, softly, she replies, I've been waiting for you to say that. The conversation is long, painful. I don't expect things to change overnight. I don't expect her to suddenly see everything the way I do. But there's something different in the air now. There's an honesty in the conversation, a rawness that hasn't been there before. It's not a resolution, not yet, but it's a step. A first step toward something I can't fully see. I end the call, my chest tight, but lighter than it's been in days. Maybe this isn't the grand, sweeping victory I had imagined. Maybe it's not the end of Rachel, or my parents, or the pain they've caused. But it's a beginning, a way forward. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I have some control over the future. That I'm no longer a victim in my own story. Have you ever had a moment of clarity when you realized the silence you were fighting wasn't just from others, but from within yourself? How did you take the first step to break that cycle? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your story. I pull out of the parking lot, and as I drive away, I feel the tension leave my body, little by little. The city streets are quiet now, the traffic lighter than usual. It feels like the calm after a storm, but this isn't over. This is just the beginning. Jace is waiting for me at home, and no matter what happens next, I know this. I will protect him, I will love him, and I will never let anyone make him feel like he doesn't matter. The journey isn't over. It's just shifting. It's time to leave the past behind and start living for the future. For the first time in a long time, the future feels possible again.